Welcome, friends and foes, survivors and killers. Let's sit around the campfire together and talk about Dead by Daylight. Specifically, it's time to address a bitter truth about the game, how Dead by Daylight is sadly dying. I'm done trying to dance around the issue of DBD's impending demise. It isn't hard to see. The game is seeping players and money like a dearest's sores. Check the Steam charts. The average players have dropped from a historic high to still significantly higher than they were before, but not quite as high as the historic high. They've increased the number of licensed collaborations. They're outsourcing their IP to make board games and K-pop songs. All classic signs of a game and company at death's door. There's a couple of preeminent theories as to why. For starters, the new MMR system that's gained some flack because rewarding players who escape games with more corrupt deadlock face-camping bubbers than they were getting before has somehow proved unpopular. Then there's the meta, because when some of the strongest perks on either side are a literal invincibility button with a dash extends duration of any chase with nothing the killer can do about it, and random free insta-downs as a reward for playing like shit, there's a chance that might make game quality a little bit worse overall. And let's not forget the newest killer, who's a hit-and-run killer reliant on building pressure through injuries in a meta defined by infinite free healing, with no way to turn it off for good. As we all know, a new killer who completely collapses to probably the most powerful and common-sized strategy right now is sure to be a popular inclusion. But the biggest reason for Dead by Daylight's collapse has got to be competition. VHS, a game which I've already talked about, has clearly got the developers at Behaviour quaking in their boots, which you can see when they do things like release content and have events, which famously they've never done before and have no other reason to do. Not to mention all the other ASIMs that killed DBD in the past. Home Sweet Home Survive, Resident Evil Resistance, last year The Nightmare, Prop Night, all titans of the gaming landscape that left Behaviour in the dust. But Behaviour's greatest obstacle is not one of these games. In fact, it is even another ASIM. I'm talking about a single-player experience that's enchanted players across the world and galvanised gamers and devs alike to reconsider the way they think of game design. It's the successor to one of the most revered names in gaming history that still turns heads today and expands on the world, ideas and themes of the original work with stunning visuals and an even more intelligent and well-conceived story. I'm of course talking about the masterpiece that is Shaq-Fu, A Legend Reborn. There's simply no doubt in my mind that the sequel to the 1994 fighting game Shaq-Fu is the prophesied Dead by Daylight killer. The terror of Montreal and the shadow that wakes Mkote up in cold sweats in the middle of the night. But before I go into the nitty-gritty of the masterful gameplay, I think I need to dive deep into the history of this game and its enigmatic creator, the juggernaut of basketball and game design savant, Shaquille O'Neal, better known as Shaq. Not Big Shaq or Radio Shack or Kingsley Shacklebolt, the very sensitively chosen name of one of Harry Potter's few black wizards, just Shaq. Shaq was quite a well-known basketball player known for his time in the Los Angeles Lakers, which is a name that always threw me off because apparently a Laker is a kind of trout, and fish aren't very good at basketball, so I'm not really sure they thought it through. Plus, LA has like a dozen lakes in the area, so it's not really clear which lake they're Lakers of, and it's all a bit unnecessarily confusing, which might have been why Shaq's real passion was always video games. He originally put his name to Shaq-Fu, a fighting game that's carved its name into gaming history at or near the top of several journalists' tier lists. Tier lists of what, I don't know because I can't actually read, but Shaq-Fu was definitely at the top of them. The highly educational YouTuber Darkmane covered his experience playing through the original Shaq-Fu, which you can find in the description if you want more high quality Shaq content. Shaq's special favourite game, however, was Dead by Daylight. He loved it so much, there was nothing he enjoyed more after a stressful day of shooting some hoops and taking dodgy corporate sponsorships more than running around a bit of wood and occasionally dropping it. He loved it so much that he even named himself after his favourite game mechanic, the Shaq. But he only did that because Kobe did it first. But one day, in the misty before times of 25th of January 2022, something went wrong. Shaq's favourite killers, the twins, were looked into for a balance update, and his special favourite add-on, Stale Biscuit, ended up being nerfed for no reason at all. This angered Shaq so much that he cut all ties with behaviour and wasted no time producing a sequel to Shaq-Fu, so incredibly awe-inspiring and powerful that it would wipe Dead by Daylight off the map completely. The world was blessed by Shaq-Fu, a legend reborn. And as soon as you load into the game, the title screen music immediately hits you and gets you in the mood for the high-octane gaming experience you've just sat down for.
I'm back and about to storm. Shaq-Fu, a legend reborn.
So with this absolute beat coursing through our bodies, let's go. Straight into the first cutscene and you're immediately hit by this game's hard-hitting takes on cultural heritage and the difficulties of raising an adopted child. Baby Shaq was found in a handbag in a river in China and was adopted by a Chinese caricature who trained him in martial arts as he grew up to be a rickshaw driver.
Shaq here, time will soon arrive when your strength will be needed.
When?
But everything changed when his hometown of Hung Lo was attacked by the forces of Yen Lo Wang, a god of death intent on taking over the world by manipulating the herds of humanity to do her evil bidding. She plans to do this by using celebrities deployed across the world to break the human race to their will, and the game uses this as opportunities for some biting and topical social commentary. Because nothing says cutting-edge highbrow comedy like a Kim Kardashian boss fight where she turns into a giant ass that shits out fireballs. One thing I really valued was how Shaq being Chinese is treated very sensitively by the characters and story. Despite not being ethnically Chinese, allies and enemies alike accept Shaq as Chinese unquestioningly and his race isn't really brought up at all.
Off, White Rice! We're here for the old man!
Okay, his race is brought up a bit.
Ah, damn it, you obsidian yoke dodger!
Okay, his race is brought up quite a lot, but honestly to DVD players that's probably part of the appeal. It's why Shaq-Fu is such a strong competitor to Dead by Daylight. This game's humour is just racist enough to draw the attention of DVD comp players and well-known content creators, but not quite racist enough that all won't be forgiven when they make a twit-longer about it in a few months' time, and promise to be better next time when we all know they won't. But enough about this game's heartfelt love of racial stereotypes, because we've got celebrity bosses to kill. Each level takes place in a different location in the world, starting in Hung Lo and then moving on to places like Beverly Hills, Fiji and eventually Hell, with the relevant celebrity boss at the end of each one. On the way to them you're swarmed by waves of enemies that fit several basic types that are slightly adjusted both mechanically and visually to fit the new setting. For example, each level has a fairly typical ranged enemy that you'll see cropping up more in later waves. In the second level of the game, for example, Baby's Crib, these will be gunners who fire some horrible grape soda at you that sticks to the environment. But in the Sunset Strip, that enemy will be demonic lawyers who throw litigation and restraining orders at you, which, honest to God, is one of the few things in this game that made me genuinely chuckle, because unless your name was Matt Murdock, bullying lawyers is always justified regardless of context. These enemies change constantly throughout the levels, giving us a wide variety of enemy design that you can review at your pleasure in the Shakopedia, that updates as you come across them. You've got Chinese stereotype with a Guandao, Firework Man, Jim Bro, who's probably meant to be a homophobic stereotype, Paul Blart Mall Cop, Union Busters, Nazis, Big Nazis, Wario, Ilsa She-Wolf of the SS, K-pop stans, literal Grand Wizards of the KKK, and demonically possessed variants on all of the above. Shaq's moveset to combat these swarms of enemies is pretty substantial. You have a basic attack with a size 22 kick that changes how it executes depending on how many basic attacks you've used, and a dash that pushes enemies into one place so you can catch groups of enemies in your combos. And by combos I just mean how many times you hit them before using the kick. Side note, I like that a basic attack into immediate size 22 stomp has no cooldown and basically creates a stun lock that can kill almost anything eventually if other enemies don't interrupt you. While most of the game's enemies are basically just cannon fodder to the point that half of their deaths are to the projectiles or attacks of their comrades, The few enemies that require you to actually pay attention to what's going on the screen can usually be killed fairly easily with this stun lock combo. So it's good to know the basic gameplay pattern also happens to beat the few somewhat skill testing enemies in the game, just in case you're worried you have to turn your monitor on to play this one. You also have the Shaq Slam, a downward attack that hits all enemies in a huge radius around the point of impact. It's usually intended as the "whoops I fucked up" button to get you out of trouble, but that isn't typically how I used it. My uses of the Shaq Slam were either by accident because I was trying to do a size 22 attack and misclicked, or to deal with these stupid bike enemies because it was so ridiculously unclear what you're supposed to do to beat them. These big fuckers do about a third of your health if they hit you, and you're meant to get behind the bike and press a button to throw them off and instantly kill them. But their hitbox extends out the back of the bike, and the bike grab command is super unforgiving, so if you get too close to them, you get chunked by the bike, and if you get too far away, they'll speed off before you can get in range for a grab. That's even if you figure out that you have to get behind them and grab them in the first place, because the key to do so is the same as the key to do everything else in the world, so you might just miss it. And it doesn't show you the command until you're already inside that tiny hitbox, so good luck figuring it out without dying a few times. Or you could just Shaq Slam and kill multiple of them in a single hit. Why would you not just do that instead? Just in case your stun lock combo doesn't work and you're out of stamina for a Shaq Slam, the game sometimes gives you access to some very nice power-ups, many of which massively enhance the complexity of the game experience. And I do love how many of them are deep cuts to the real-life lore of Shaq by looking into his history and corporate sponsorships. For starters, Icy Hot Pain Relief Balm, a brand for which Shaq has been the spokesman for many years, is one of the most valuable collectibles in the game and fully heals you. And for particularly tough levels you can get access to one of two temporary upgrade modes. Shaq Diesel, named after Shaq's musical career where he uses the same name, and Shaqtus, after an ad Shaq did for ESPN that I'm sure all the Shaq historians out there will be absolutely delighted to see. Both of them really enrich the already complex gameplay of Shaq-Fu by, well, let me just show you.
Gameplay.
One detail I really enjoyed was how on some of these levels it tells you to kill, say, 200 enemies before proceeding, but the game will only send exactly that amount of enemies into you as you need anyway. So it's just another kill all the enemies level like every single other level in the game, but with a little number at the top to give you the illusion of progression. That's how you know your gameplay is consequential and engages you further with the experience, by giving you a paper-thin progression tracker to reward your tiny monkey brain, like sticking electrodes into the pleasure centers of your cortex to give you an orgasm whenever you get a ball out of a little maze. But where it gets really interesting is the boss design, because I've been skirting around the issue long enough as it is. Before fighting Yenlo Wang, you have to defeat her 5 celebrity generals: Justin Bieber, Paris Hilton, Donald Trump, Kim Kardashian, and the head of the Fijian Nazi enclave, Mel Gibson. Did I mention this game came out in 2018? Yeah, not to knock the titans of gaming culture, Big D's Productions, and the masterpiece they created too harshly, but these jokes are probably funnier in 2014 when the game was crowdfunded on Indiegogo, and maybe could have been updated so the game's comedy wouldn't already be outdated before the game even came out. I think the perfect showcase of this is how the game's portrayal of Donald Trump, Arthur O'Deal, is based entirely on his presentation in The Apprentice, and makes no reference at all to the Trump presidency, despite him taking office 2 years before the game's release. No, that doesn't necessarily make the game bad, oh god it could never do that, but it just changes how you have to view it a bit. Think of Shaq-Fu: A Legend Reborn, not as a modern comic experience, but as a period piece, delving back into the rich cultural history of 2014 South Park episode. It's a portal to an older, simpler world. A time capsule back to an age where Paris Hilton's small dog was considered the height of comedy. It's frankly fascinating, like an archaeological dig site. But all of this is nothing compared to the final boss. Yenlo Wang is revealed to be none other than Shaq's adopted mother, Madonna, who took him in as a poor African child before getting rid of him once it became unfashionable to keep him. This is certainly a storytelling decision, and its impact on the narrative is mirrored by the challenging complexity of the boss battle itself, where she mostly kills the other enemies for you, and you spend most of her time standing still pressing the A button, like you were probably doing throughout most of your time playing this game anyway. This leads to a strange ending, and a feeling I struggled to describe accurately while writing this script. It reminds me of how I felt after watching the Cats movie. I'd gone to see it because my friend was absolutely obsessed with the idea of watching it in a cinema, and I expected a total, unmitigated disaster. And despite that largely being what I got, I was still glad I saw it for all its horrifying glory. Shaq-Fu, A Legend Reborn, is everything it's set out to be. It's a sequel to the original 1994 Shaq-Fu that follows in the historic footsteps of its predecessor. There's no surprise that a game as phenomenally well made and maintained as Dead by Daylight should have an equally high quality release be the bringer of its destruction. But any game out there should be honoured to die at the hands of Shaq-Fu, A Legend Reborn. And the adventure's not over. Even once you complete the Herculean 3-hour campaign, you can play the DLC, with a premise even more enticing than that of the original game. Shaq-Fu, The Adventures of Dirty Barry. Let's read the synopsis together, shall we? The bizarre adventure finds the former president on the trail of a serial celebrity murderer that the police can't seem to catch. They call in Dirty Barry to take over, and our players will jet from Paris to outer space and back again, battling through wild bosses to save the celebs from impending grisly ends. Enemies range from politicians to clones, and even flying rear ends, and you can use Barry's Peace Prize drone strike for some instantaneous crowd control. Dirty Barry mode helps rack up kills with an assault rifle and plenty of grenades to help thin out herds of enemies. He also has the Barracan Roller and Southside Smash moves up his sleeve for some devastating melee attacks. Wow, this game sounds amazing! I can't wait to make a follow-up video about it. Wait, hang on a second. The Shaq-Fu game is a timed exclusive that is only available to those who purchase physical editions already? Sorry, but what the fuck is this? How is the world supposed to enjoy the magnificence of Shaq-Fu, The Adventures of Dirty Barry, if it's a timed and physical exclusive? This is such an unbelievably messed up business practice. The people at Big D's Productions should be ashamed of themselves. It's disgusting. I won't stand for it. I paid an earnest and fair 83 pence for my copy of Shaq-Fu from CD Keys, and I will not tolerate the indignity of having to buy a physical copy on the Nintendo bloody Switch to enjoy this masterpiece. I'll do anything for Shaq-Fu, The Adventures of Dirty Barry, but I won't do that. Right, if anyone needs me, I'm going to go play a real game that actually cares about its players. Michael Jordan, Chaos in the Windy City. Goodbye, you meretricious sods, and I'll see you next time. Now, go away.